I think the first thing I would ask you very directly is there's an investigation ongoing. So until that investigation is completed, would you consider withdrawing your rate increase request?
Yeah, we have considered withdrawing the rate case as a whole, and the decision that we've made and the recommendation that we would have is it would not be the right thing to do. I mean, ultimately what's included in there is a multi-year view on the capital that's necessary. You heard me talk about this morning the condition of the assets, the need for the cost recovery to ensure that we're maintaining and investing in the Niagara Mohawk electric infrastructure, and we think it's to the best interest that the case go forward and come to a conclusion.
If the independent audit basically indicated that there were more inappropriate activities, then how are you going to respond to that? And what action would you take? The commitment that we've already provided the Commission and publicly is that we will take any action necessary depending on the findings. So the opportunity would be to get the conclusion of the audit, and the Commission is going to have full access to the audit. They will not only have full access to the final product, they're getting updates as we go through the audit. And so our objective throughout the whole process is to be transparent and provide them all the information they need so together we can make the right decisions going forward. Mr. King, as you were talking at closing today, you talked about you wanted to close on the future. And obviously you want to have and allow people to have some faith and confidence that what you're projecting would be somewhat accurate. In 2002, Niagara Mohawk said by 2011, or National Grid, that rates would actually decrease. But we find ourselves in a situation right now where you're talking about these type of rate increases. How do we justify that? And where's the credibility as you're looking to project and you want us to believe in something, but the past history has shown that when you've indicated something, you've really deviated from that?
Well, the commitment at the beginning of 2002 for that decrease was specifically related to the stranded cost, or the CTC, that the chairman mentioned in his opening comments. That does, in fact, under current amortization schedules, wrap up at the end of 2011. So technically, you would see an adjustment in rates in 2012. However, the real facts are that over 10 years, you've had cost inflation. As I've mentioned, $750 million already invested and another $1.47 billion committed to be invested and will be done by the end of 2010. There's a significant amount of under-recovery of cost that needs to be now recovered. So ultimately, even though you would see that rate reduction associated with CTC, rates would increase, as you heard in our opening comments just already, at least $400 million immediately upon the end of that stranded cost. So part of our proposal to mitigate the rate volatility and bring in rate stability was to forego prompt recovery of the remaining $560 million of CTC, allow for that to go on for the next 3 to 4 years so we would not increase rates, and that would make the room for the rate increase that we're asking for. So our proposal was to bring rate stability rather than to have rates decrease in 1 month and increase the next month. And that volatility is not good for the marketplace.
Your corporate CEO, Mr. Holliday, has described the American or the U.S. operations as inadequate. Could you give us an indication of what does that mean?
Well, I can't speak for him. I can certainly speak on my experience. And
if you believe that will have a proportional effect potentially on future rate increases, is what I'm saying. What is the inadequacy?
Inadequacy from both my view as well as Steve Holliday's view really relates to the overall performance of the organization, specifically to the financial performance. And collectively, the U.S. operations, including Niagara Mohawk, are significantly underperforming relative to the rate plans. And most of them have all been out of the regulatory arena in over 10 years. And then when you have an issue like we've experienced with our including cost and our cost of service that should have not been included, it's frustrating. And it's not the reputation and not the corporate personality that we would like to be presenting to the public and to you. So that's directly where his frustration and his comments come from.
Just a couple more questions, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
I want to make sure we can give this to other members, and maybe one more. I've got a lot of questions, but maybe one more, at least global, than one more specific to a lot of the consumers and what they're dealing with today. Last month, you may be aware, obviously, that the Attorney General of Massachusetts, Coatley, claimed that National Grid had passed along about $100 million in natural gas rate increases to Massachusetts customers. And she says that these should be billed to other customers in states that surround, like New Hampshire, Rhode Island, New York. Their office is requesting an audit now of Grid and how they distributed those rate increases. Could you comment on whether or not that could also have now an impact on New York State users, depending on that decision?
Yeah, we are doing an audit, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, with Liberty Group. It's not just for Niagara Mohawk. We're doing it across the entire U.S. And I feel very confident that by far the bulk of the issues and the allocations and the cost of service are going to be in very good shape. What we will do is clean up the policies and any inappropriate expenses. But I'm confident that this audit will take care of the entire U.S. and I don't see large cost shifts between various jurisdictions.
I'd like to just ask you a quick thing as an individual. When you look at the nature of the business, and I know you do some great things on the bill by trying to inform and educate people on conservation, but one of the concerns that I have is for the average residential customer that when you talk about reducing charges, when you look at the delivery and not the supply as being a major cost. I actually have a statement here. When you look at this, it's an elderly person, and consumption was about $13 in electricity, about $8 in gas usage, but the delivery charge for the electricity was $14.94, and the gas charge was gas delivery charge $19.95. So there was little or nothing consumed, but as far as the delivery cost, the individual's looking at an expensive bill with over $34. So how do you justify the delivery charge when there's little or no consumption? And it's just like paying for the privilege of being a customer, I guess. How do we deal with that when we talk about high rates?
Well, the delivery charge, as you'll see in my written testimony, has basically been flat to somewhat declining over the past decade. So there are other things that are included in the total bill that add to that. So it's not the delivery charge that you're seeing increasing as a big part of the bill. It's many other things like, for instance, the state's 18A assessment added a significant amount to the bill. But the National Grid cost recovery component, which is our transmission and distribution rate, has been relatively flat for a decade.
And you talked about, when you're looking at the changes that you're making in power stations and things like that, isn't leakage one of your biggest problems too?
I'm sorry?
The leakage of electricity.
Yeah, the loss, it's basically loss. And that will continue to shrink as an overall cost factor as technology is upgraded and the facilities are upgraded, because the new technology reduces the amount of lost power.
And what about lines? Looking at what you're doing to upgrade?
Same thing. So it's an aged infrastructure that needs investment, and that new technology will begin to mitigate some of those issues.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.